Rose Parker was a spirited, creative woman in her late 20s, living a modest life in the small town of Maplewood. Her days were filled with designing graphics for local businesses, her evenings with friends, and her weekends with spontaneous adventures. Rose was content, if not particularly thrilled, with her life. She had always dreamed of something more, but had yet to figure out what that more was. One sunny afternoon, Rose received an invitation to her childhood friend Sarah's wedding in the bustling city. Excited for a break from her routine, Rose packed her bags and made her way to the city, unaware that this trip would change her life forever. At the wedding reception, held in an elegant hotel ballroom, Rose felt a bit out of place among the glittering crowd. The guests were mostly high society types, draped in designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Rose, with her simple yet stylish dress and down-to-earth demeanor, stood out in her way. As she moved towards the bar to get a drink, she accidentally bumped into a tall, handsome man who was holding a glass of champagne. The impact caused his drink to spill, and Rose immediately apologized, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to," she started, but the man interrupted with a warm smile. "It's quite all right," he said, his deep voice soothing her nerves. "No harm done." Rose looked up at him, noticing his striking features: dark hair, piercing blue eyes, and a chiseled jawline. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that hinted at wealth, but there was something about his smile that was genuinely kind, putting her at ease. They struck up a conversation, and Rose quickly realized that this man, William, was different from the other guests. He was charming, yes, but also down-to-earth and genuinely interested in what she had to say. They talked for hours, moving from lighthearted banter to deeper topics. Rose was captivated by his intelligence, wit, and the way he made her feel like she was the only person in the room. As the evening wore on, Rose found herself drawn to William in a way she hadn't expected. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, and by the end of the night, they had exchanged phone numbers, both eager to see each other again. In the days that followed, William and Rose began seeing each other regularly. William would take Rose on spontaneous dates, picnics in the park, late-night walks along the city streets, and dinners at cozy little restaurants. Each date brought them closer, and their connection deepened. William was fascinated by Rose's creativity and passion for her work. She was different from anyone he had ever met, genuine, kind, and unpretentious. Rose, in turn, was charmed by William's intellect, his sense of humor, and his ability to make her feel special. But despite their growing closeness, William kept a part of his life hidden. He never talked about his work in detail, always giving vague answers when Rose asked about his career. Rose, while curious, didn't press him for answers. She trusted him and believed that he would tell her when the time was right. One evening, after a particularly romantic date, William took Rose to a quiet spot overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, with the lights of the city twinkling like stars below them. As they sat together, William turned to Rose, his eyes filled with emotion. "Rose, I've never met anyone like you," he said softly. "You make me feel like I can be myself, like I don't have to put on a show or pretend to be someone I'm not." Rose's heart swelled with emotion. She had never felt this way about anyone before, and she knew that she was falling in love with William. "I feel the same way," she whispered, her voice filled with sincerity. In that moment, William, caught up in the intensity of his feelings, impulsively proposed to Rose. "Marry me, Rose," he said, his voice filled with hope and vulnerability. Rose was taken aback, but the love she felt for William overwhelmed any doubts she had. Without hesitation, she said yes, believing in the magic of the moment. The decision to get married was made on a whim, and within a week, Rose and William had a small, intimate wedding. The ceremony took place in a quaint little chapel on the outskirts of the city, with just a few close friends in attendance. The setting was simple, yet beautiful, with flowers adorning the pews and soft music playing in the background. As Rose walked down the aisle, she felt a mix of emotions: joy, excitement, and a hint of nervousness. But when she saw William standing at the altar, all her doubts melted away. He looked at her with such love and adoration that she knew she had made the right decision. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt vows and tender moments. As they exchanged rings, William's hands trembled slightly, a sign of how much this moment meant to him. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, William leaned in and kissed Rose, sealing their love with a promise of forever. After the ceremony, they had a small reception at a cozy restaurant nearby. The atmosphere was warm and intimate, with their closest friends toasting to their happiness. Rose was overwhelmed with joy, feeling like she had found her soulmate. William, too, was happy, but there was a part of him that was anxious. He knew that his secret, his true identity, would eventually come out, and he worried about how it would affect their relationship. But for now, they were content, basking in the glow of their new marriage. They spent their honeymoon in a secluded cabin in the mountains, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was a time of blissful togetherness, with days spent hiking through the woods and nights cuddled up by the fireplace. They talked about their future, their dreams, and the life they wanted to build together. After their honeymoon, Rose and William returned to the city to start their life together. They moved into a cozy apartment in a charming neighborhood, a place that felt like home the moment they stepped through the door. Rose continued her work as a freelance graphic designer, while William told her he was an entrepreneur working on various projects. Life seemed perfect. They settled into a comfortable routine, with William often surprising Rose with romantic gestures, breakfast in bed, spontaneous weekend getaways, and little notes left around the house telling her how much he loved her. Rose was happy, believing that they were building a life together from the ground up. However, there were moments when Rose noticed that William seemed distant, as if something was weighing on his mind. He would often stay up late, staring out the window or working on his laptop, his face etched with worry. Rose, concerned, asked him about it, but William always brushed it off, assuring her that everything was fine. Despite these small concerns, Rose trusted William completely. She believed that whatever was bothering him, he would tell her when the time was right. She focused on her work, which was flourishing, and on their life together, which, for the most part, was filled with love and happiness. One afternoon, while cleaning their apartment, Rose stumbled upon a stack of documents hidden in William's desk drawer. Curiosity got the better of her, and she began to read through them. To her shock, she discovered that William was not just an ordinary entrepreneur, but the CEO of a multinational corporation and a billionaire. Her heart raced as she read through the documents, her mind filled with questions. Why had William kept this from her? What else was he hiding? Feeling a mix of betrayal and confusion, Rose decided to confront William that evening. When William came home, Rose was waiting for him, the documents spread out on the table. The look on her face made his heart sink. He knew that the time had come to face the truth. "William, what is this?" Rose asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "Why didn't you tell me?" William sighed, running a hand through his hair. He had hoped to keep his secret a little longer, but he knew that he couldn't avoid it any longer. "Rose, I wanted to tell you," he began, his voice filled with regret. "But I was afraid. I didn't want you to love me because of my money. I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I have." Rose listened, her emotions swirling. She understood his reasons, but she still felt hurt and betrayed. "But we're married, William. How could you keep something like this from me?" William stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I love you, Rose, more than anything in this world. And I wanted to be sure that you loved me too, not for my wealth, but for the person I am." Tears welled up in Rose's eyes as she looked into William's pleading gaze. She loved him, that much was true. But the fact that he had kept such a significant part of his life from her made her question everything. Could she trust him again? Could their marriage survive this revelation? As they stood there, holding each other in the quiet of their apartment, Rose realized that despite the hurt, she still loved William deeply. And maybe, just maybe, their love was strong enough to overcome this obstacle. The night after Rose discovered William's secret was a difficult one. She lay in bed, her mind racing with thoughts and emotions she couldn't quite control. William, sensing her turmoil, stayed by her side, but neither of them could find the right words to say. They were both consumed by the gravity of the revelation. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in their apartment was tense. Rose was distant, her trust in William shattered, and William was desperate to make things right. He showered her with apologies and reassurances, trying to show her that his love was genuine. Yet, Rose couldn't help but feel as though she was living with a stranger. She had married a man she thought she knew, only to discover he was living a double life. One evening, as they sat in their living room, the silence between them was suffocating. Finally, Rose spoke, her voice trembling. "William, I need to know why. Why did you hide this from me for so long? Were you ever going to tell me?" William's face was etched with remorse. He reached out to take her hand, but Rose pulled away. "I was scared, Rose," he confessed, his voice filled with anguish. "I was terrified that if you knew the truth, everything would change. That you would see me differently, or worse, that you wouldn't want to be with me anymore." Rose's heart ached at his words. She wanted to understand, but the betrayal she felt was still too fresh. "But we're married, William. We're supposed to share everything, be honest with each other. How can I trust you after this?" William looked at her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I know I've hurt you, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. But please, Rose, don't give up on us. I love you more than anything, and I will do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust." Rose was silent, tears streaming down her face. She knew she loved William, but the road to rebuilding their relationship seemed daunting. Deep down, she wanted to forgive him, but the fear of being hurt again held her back. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Rose began to soften. William was relentless in his efforts to prove his love for her. He started by being more open, sharing details about his life and his work that he had previously kept hidden. He introduced Rose to the world he had kept secret, the business meetings, the luxurious lifestyle, and the high-profile connections. He wanted her to see that he was still the same man she had fallen in love with, despite his wealth and status. One weekend, William suggested they take a trip to the countryside, away from the city and the pressures of his business. He hoped that being in a more peaceful environment would help them reconnect. Rose agreed, though still hesitant. She wanted to give their marriage a chance. They stayed in a charming, secluded cottage surrounded by rolling hills and lush greenery. The beauty of the place slowly began to work its magic on Rose. They spent their days hiking, talking, and just enjoying each other's company without the distractions of the outside world. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, William handed Rose a small, beautifully wrapped box. "I got this for you before we got married, but I wanted to wait for the right moment to give it to you," he said softly. Rose opened the box to find a delicate, diamond-studded necklace. It was exquisite, and she could tell it had been chosen with great care. "It's beautiful, William," she whispered, touched by the gesture. William smiled, taking the necklace from the box and carefully clasping it around her neck. "I love you, Rose," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "And I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. I know I made a mistake, but I promise you, I will never keep anything from you again." Rose felt her heart begin to thaw. The sincerity in William's words and actions was undeniable. She realized that while he had hurt her, his love for her had always been real. She looked into his eyes and saw the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had been there for her through thick and thin. Slowly, she nodded, tears in her eyes. "I love you too, William, and I want to try to start fresh and build a life together." With their renewed commitment to each other, Rose and William returned to the city, determined to make their marriage work. Rose began to immerse herself in William's world, learning about his business and the responsibilities that came with it. She attended events with him, meeting the people who had been part of his life for so long. At first, it was overwhelming. The opulence and extravagance of William's world were a far cry from the simple life Rose was used to. But William was patient, guiding her through every step and making sure she never felt out of place. As Rose became more comfortable, she started to see the man behind the billionaire facade. William wasn't just a wealthy CEO. He was a man with dreams, fears, and vulnerabilities. He had worked hard to build his empire, but it had come at a cost. The pressure and the loneliness that came with his position had made him guarded and secretive. One night, as they lay in bed, Rose turned to William. "I never realized how much you've had to go through, how lonely it must have been," she said, her voice filled with empathy. William sighed, pulling her closer. "It was lonely, but that's why I'm so grateful for you, Rose. You've brought light into my life, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Rose looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity there. "You won't," she whispered. "We're in this together now." Just as Rose and William were settling into their new life together, Rose began to feel unwell. She was often tired, and certain smells made her nauseous. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just the stress of adjusting to her new life. But when the symptoms persisted, she decided to see a doctor. The news she received was completely unexpected. Rose was pregnant. She was both thrilled and nervous. While she had always wanted children, the timing was unexpected, and she wasn't sure how William would react. She decided to wait for the right moment to tell him. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Rose could hardly contain her excitement. After they had finished eating, she took William's hand. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. William looked at her, concern in his eyes. "What is it, Rose? Is everything okay?" Rose smiled, her heart pounding. "William, we're going to have a baby." For a moment, William was speechless. Then, a broad smile spread across his face, and he pulled Rose into a tight embrace. "This is incredible, Rose," he said, his voice filled with joy. "I can't believe it. We're going to be parents." The news brought them even closer together. William was over the moon, and he immediately began making plans for the baby's arrival. He wanted to give their child everything, to ensure that they had the best possible start in life. Rose was touched by his enthusiasm, and she felt her love for William grow even stronger. They spent the next few months preparing for the baby's arrival, with William taking an active role in every decision. He was determined to be the best father he could be, and Rose knew that their child would be born into a family filled with love. As the months passed, Rose and William's relationship continued to blossom. They welcomed their first child, a beautiful baby girl, into the world, and she quickly became the center of their lives. William was a doting father, and Rose couldn't have been happier. Their lives were filled with joy, laughter, and the kind of love that only grew stronger with time. They were no longer just a couple. They were a family, and they cherished every moment they spent together. A few years later, Rose and William were blessed with a second child, a baby boy who brought even more happiness into their lives. Their home was filled with the sounds of laughter and the pitter-patter of tiny feet, and they wouldn't have had it any other way. William continued to run his business, but he always made sure to prioritize his family. He had learned that wealth and success meant nothing without the people you loved, and he was determined never to lose sight of what truly mattered. Rose, too, found fulfillment in her role as a mother and a wife. She continued to pursue her passion for design, working on projects that allowed her to balance her career with her family life. She was happy, content, and deeply in love with the life they had built together. One evening, as they sat on their porch, watching their children play in the yard, William took Rose's hand. "I love you, Rose," he said softly. "Thank you for giving me this life, for being my partner, and for always believing in us." Rose smiled, her heart full. "I love you too, William, and I wouldn't trade this life for anything." As they watched the sun set, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink, Rose knew that they had found their happily ever after. It hadn't been an easy journey, but it had been worth it. They had faced challenges, made mistakes, but in the end, their love had triumphed. Together, they had built a life full of love, trust, and joy, a life that they would cherish forever. With their two beautiful children by their side, and the knowledge that they had each other through thick and thin, Rose and William looked forward to the future with hope and excitement. They knew that whatever challenges might come their way, they would face them together, hand in hand. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Rose leaned her head on William's shoulder, feeling completely at peace. They had found their forever, and nothing could ever take that away. And so, they lived happily ever after, their love story continuing to unfold with each passing day, a testament to the power of love, trust, and the belief that sometimes, the most unexpected journeys lead to the greatest of destinations. Hope you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel. Your participation is essential so that we can continue to bring you more incredible stories. Share it with your friends to help our channel grow. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.